Hello, welcome to Papa Nick's Music. I am, as always, your host, Papa Nick Lewis. And this week, once again, I am taking my cue from Paul Bertolino and his trusty sidekicks, Crystal Durant and Tommy Von Voigt, over at As It Should Be. If you're not watching As It Should Be, you should be watching As It Should Be. Right now, they're doing a weekly series where they count down their favorite live albums per year. So we're going to talk about live albums today, which you read the description before you started this. Live albums, they're hit and miss, right? Don't get me wrong. I love a good live album, and some of them are, they're iconic. For people my age, it's hard to imagine what the 70s would have been like without Frampton Comes Alive and Kiss Alive, right? Huge albums that, were just, cultural icons practically. But for the most part, the problem I have with live albums is that they are subpar greatest hits packages where the songs are played faster than normal and there's, crappy sound and a lot of people yelling in the background. And so I for the most part, I can take or leave live albums. There's a reason that we cut those out when we're doing rankings here at Papa Nick's Music. But there are some that are really good. There are some that I like. And so I'm going to go ahead and talk about live albums today. I don't have nearly the fortitude to be able to talk about so many of these that I could, give you my favorites per year. That would drive me crazy. Most years I would have a list of maybe one or two. So I'm just going to dump it all in one. These are my favorite live albums. As always, we got to do the subjectivity notice. Even though this is my favorite, it clearly says in the title, these are my favorite live albums, I'm still going to do the subjectivity notice. We firmly believe here at Papa Nick's Music that there's no such thing as objectively good or objectively bad art. There's only art that we like and art that we do not. And as long as we keep that in mind, this is a wonderful conversation. It's entertaining, it's informative, it's a chance to see the world from somebody else's perspective, and boy howdy, isn't that nice. The conversation goes off the rails really quickly, though, when somebody in the conversation insists on being seen as objectively right. So let's not do that. I'm not saying these are objectively the best live albums ever recorded. No, these are just the ones I like the most. Right? Cool. Also, since this is a favorites list, if you've seen any of my favorites videos before, you'll know when I'm talking favorites, I limit myself to the recordings that I have in my library. There are things that I like that I would not include here simply because I don't have a copy of it. Frampton Comes Alive, believe it or not, I don't have a copy of that. So, I'm limiting myself to what I have on my CDs, on my vinyl. Technically, I'm also limiting myself to what I have on cassette, but I don't have any cassettes to show you tonight. It's all CD and vinyl. And then finally, because I am shoehorning this into the format of the Top 10 series, Papa Nick's Music's Top 10... Let me try that again. I haven't even started drinking it yet. Papa Nick's Music's Top 10 series is unofficially sponsored by Schöfferhofer Beer. If you like Hefeweizen beer and grapefruit soda, you're going to love Schöfferhofer because... that's good beer. One of these days. Okay, before I get into my list proper, there are a few honorable mentions that I have to do. I started out with 25, 30 albums because, I had to talk about this, and I got to talk about this, and I got to talk about this, and I finally said, no. Got to get it down to a top 10, which I did, but then I gave myself a few honorable mentions. So, honorable mention number one. One of the things about a live album that will make it successful for me is if it evokes the sense of actually being at the concert. And if we're talking about something that makes it seem like I'm actually sitting at the concert, we are talking about Mike Nesmith's Movies of the Mind album. I saw him on this tour. Signed copy. Thank you very much. I saw him on this tour. He stopped up at the One World Theater in Austin. And it was a wonderful show. And so when I listen to this, I am flashing back in my mind to sitting in the audience. And, you like that in a live album. You like that sense of being there. which I have with Movies in the Mind. I'll put the CDs up here. Yeah. Second, there are some works on here that I really wanted to include them, but they don't really fit the mold even of a live album. Specifically, An Evening with Tom Lehrer, or An Evening Wasted with Tom Lehrer, excuse me. Martin Mull and His Fabulous Furniture in Your Living Room. These are technically live albums, but they're comedy albums, right? I mean, they're live in the same way that if you get an album of Stephen Wright or Brian Regan or, heaven forbid, James Acaster, it's a comedian doing a set in front of an audience because you need the laughter, you need to hear that, and that's what we have here. But they're both wonderful albums. The music is good, the musicians are good, so we got to include them. But I couldn't really force them into the top 10, so they're here in honorable mention land. I have one that almost made my top 10. Blues Brothers, Briefcase Full of Blues from 1978. I loved this thing when it came out, and I still love it. This is not a comedy album. Oh, no. These guys are deadly serious in this music. But it's wonderful. The band is great. It's just, it feels more like a novelty record than an actual record, even though it's not. But, that's why it can't make the top 10. But I really like that. We all heard Soul Man and we heard Rubber Biscuit way too many times. But, B-Movie Boxcar Blues. Oh, my God, do I love that song. Not even a big Delbert McClinton fan, but I like that song. And then finally, my last honorable mention is Loudon Wainwright III's Unrequited from 1975. And the only reason this didn't make my top 10 is that it's a single album, and one side is studio recordings, the other side is live. But the thing I like about that, the studio side is good. There's not a bad song on this album. I love this album. But I really like Loudon Wainwright live. I like it. I like that setting, just him and his guitar, and singing and interacting with the audience. And there's a point in the run up to one of these songs where a member of the audience sneezes, and it throws him off a little bit, but he doesn't miss a beat. He keeps going, and then he's starting to say something. The guy sneezes again. It just stops him in his tracks, and he's, after a second, shouts out, "Gesundheit, all right." Love it. Anyway, Loudon Wainwright III, Unrequited from 1975 is a wonderful album, and half of it's live, but in order to make the top 10, the whole thing has to be live. So those are my honorable mentions. Now, let's get into the top 10. Coming in at number 10, when this artist first started recording music, he started out as a writer. Had a couple of minor hits with a couple of different acts, and then he started trying to make a career as a singer. And for the first couple albums, they were having a hard time figuring out just exactly how to do this. But by the time they got to the third album, Randy Newman Live. Randy Newman's first two albums are uneven. They're weird. The first album, it's like they're trying to make him sound like, Pat Boone or something. The second album is it's like it was recorded in a closet. I can't quite put my finger on what's wrong with that second album. But the third album that he released was Randy Newman Live, and here we got it. This is just him sitting at his piano playing in front of an audience, and the magic of the songs comes through. You don't need to try to produce his vocals to make them sound good. That's not the point when it's Randy Newman. The point is in the characterizations that he presents in the songs, and that comes through with just piano and voice. Excellent, excellent live album. Coming in at number 9, out of all of the videos that I've done, I don't know that I've ever talked about Jonathan Coulton. And I love Jonathan Coulton. I love this album, Best Concert Ever. It's his live album, and it's got most of the songs that you would know if you're familiar with him. We've got, Let me remind myself. The Future Soon, IKEA, Shop Vac, uh, his version of Baby Got Back, um, Chiron Beta Prime, Tom Cruise Crazy. I mean, it's essentially a greatest hits package, and most of them it's him performing by himself or with a couple of backing musicians. The version of Code Monkey on here is wonderful. I love Jonathan Colton. I love Best Concert Ever. It's my number 9 live album, even though I stumbled trying to read the song titles. Coming in at number 8. I was just talking about Roy Clark. What? Last week? Week before? Yeah, last week was Hall & Oates. So the week before. Guitar solos. I was talking about Roy Clark and how much I love his version of The Great Pretender. I love this whole album. Yeah, we've got The Great Pretender. We've got Thank God and Greyhound. We've got Under the Double Eagle. We've got Green Green Grass of Home. Yesterday When I Was Young. Oh, it's Roy Clark. Come on. You can't beat Roy Clark. And 1972's Roy Clark Live comes at number 8 on my top 10. Coming in at number 7. This album was recorded in 1967, actually 2 concert performances, maybe 3. Yeah. A string of concert performances in 1967. The album itself wasn't released until 1987. So 20 years later that we finally got The Monkees live, 1967. I love this album. I love The Monkees as a live act. They were raw, yes. The songs, they didn't quite sound like the recorded versions. This is true. But they've got an energy that those original recorded versions didn't have. One of the things that was a drawback to trying to release this at the time, the whole idea of them trying to even record a concert album, was that the fan noise was such that they couldn't even hear themselves, much less try to record it. But you listen to this and you hear how good these guys were as a performing band. And this is 1967, okay? They formed, a year earlier than this. It's amazing that in that short a time, they developed chops that good. So, number 7, The Monkees live, 1967. Okay, number 6. I've never made a secret of the fan that I am a huge fan of Bare Naked Ladies. The first Bare Naked Ladies album that I encountered was their live album, Rock Spectac, from 95, 96, whatever that was. And so, yeah, I'm going to have Bare Naked Ladies on here. And I was tempted to put Rock Spectac on here, but I didn't. I went with, and I'm sorry that it doesn't have a decent case, the all new review live from the Glenn Gould studio. This was released as a promotional disc when they released their first Bare Naked Ladies Are Me or Bare Naked Ladies Are Men. I have to look it up every time, and I didn't look it up before I started this, so yeah. Whichever of those came first. Well, this is that same album, the same songs, the same running order. It's just they're done in a small venue concert setting, live with an audience, but with acoustic instrumentation and with no backing instruments, no horns, nothing like that. And some of the songs definitely benefit from that. The version of Wind It Up that's on here is fantastic. I mean, I like the original version, but the version that's on here is fantastic as well. I don't know if you can buy this. Frankly, I haven't tried. But you can stream it. So, all new review live from the Glenn Gould studio from 2006, Bare Naked Ladies. Okay. Number 5. Of my albums that are up here, I've got a couple that are highly unusual, that are a little on the groundbreaky side, and one of them is my number 5, which is Joe Jackson's Live 1980 to 1986. What is unusual about this album, if you're not familiar with it, is it's a double album, as you can see, nice and thick, and each side of each album comes from a different concert tour. Side 1 is from the Beat Crazy Tour. That's with the original Joe Jackson Band. Side 2 is from the Night and Day Tour. Side 3 from the Body and Soul Tour. And Side 4 from the Big World Tour. Which means we've got 4 different bands. With Graham Maby. Although Graham Maby didn't tour for Big World. Let me double check this. Yeah, Rick Ford was the Big World Tour bassist. So we don't have, Joe Jackson is the only one who, as soon as I said that, it's like, oh, yeah. But yeah, Joe Jackson is the only one who appears on each of the tours. It is comparing the sounds of the bands is fascinating. He's always tinkering with the arrangements of the songs, so much so that there are 3 different versions of Is She Really Going Out With Him on here, from 3 very different tours. Love this album. Very strongly recommended. Joe Jackson, live, 1980-86. Great album. Coming in at number 4. I'm a huge fan of the Beach Boys. There is no way that I would put the Beach Boys concert on this list, their 60s concert. I might be tempted with their Live in London concert, but the real concert album for the Beach Boys is 73's In Concert. Double album on 1 CD. I love this album. It is a great album. It is the second Beach Boys album that I bought with my own money. I had a copy of Little Deuce Coupe from when I was a kid. And then when I got into the Beach Boys, started listening to them a lot, saw this on cassette and snapped it up, and went from there. Huge fan of the Beach Boys, and I love these versions of these songs. This is a very well performed and well recorded live album. Love Beach Boys in Concert. It's number 4. My number 3. Okay, so Joe Jackson's live album was unusual because, double album and each side comes from a different tour. Ooh, isn't that clever? This next is unusual because it's a live album recorded by an artist when he's, at the peak of his popularity, but the album itself is not a greatest hits album. That is, of course, Billy Joel's Songs in the Attic. Love this album. This album, when it came out, was groundbreaking because there were no hits on this thing. There's no Piano Man on here. There's no Movin' Out Anthony song on here. There's no She's Always a Woman. No, this is material from his first 4 albums, if we count Cold Spring Harbor. There are a couple of Cold Spring Harbor songs on here. This is material from his first 4 albums that he is now performing with his band and doing them the way I always wanted to do them. These are the way we always thought they should sound. Or this is the way I can do a live album. And not make it look like I'm cashing in. I don't know what I know what the press release story is. I don't know if that's actually what the thought process was, but the end result is a wonderful album. This is one of my favorite live albums because of the way it sounds, as well as because of the selection of the songs. It's a very well recorded album. Like Songs in the Attic a lot. It's my number 3. My number 2. Okay, there's a certain amount of affection that goes with this that is simply a product of the fact that I grew up loving this album. That's good beer. This is an album that I listened to a lot when I was a kid. And when I say when I was a kid, I mean when I was a kid. I listened to this album a lot. I've owned several different copies of it through the years. I had it on cassette. That cassette wore out. I replaced it with another cassette. That cassette wore out. I finally replaced it. I have it on vinyl. I thought I had it on CD. Don't have it on CD, but I do have it on vinyl. And that is the classic from 1972, Neil Diamond's Hot August Night. I love this album. I love these versions of these songs. That's a regrettable picture, but it looks kind of like he's, you know what it looks like. One of the things that I loved about this as a kid that I still connect to is this. This sounds like you're sitting in the venue at the concert, which I really like. I mean, it's not just a crappy sped up version of the greatest hits with crowd sounds added to it. This has the resonance, the ambiance that I want a live album to have. So number 2, largely because it was one of my favorite albums when I was a kid, Neil Diamond, Hot August Night. But my number 1, my favorite live album. Now, this is unusual for a couple of reasons. Reason number 1, even though I went out of my way to avoid duplication, this artist has already appeared in the top 10. Reason number 2, this artist, even though this artist has a huge catalog of original tunes to perform, several of the songs in this album are covers. And what is interesting is that the artist takes an original song and a cover, not always, but often takes an original and a cover and links them together in such a way that you can see how one was influenced by the other, which I find immensely pleasing. The songs have different arrangements. There are genuine surprises in what he does. There is musicianship out the wazoo, even though all of the music is being played by the trio. My favorite live album is Joe Jackson's Summer in the City. It's a trio. Joe Jackson on piano and vocals, Graham Mabey, of course, on bass, Gary Burke on drums. Gary Burke was my favorite drummer of the drummers that he worked with. I love Diamond Dave Houghton, don't get me wrong, but Gary Burke is my favorite drummer. The musicianship between these 3 guys is amazing. The song selection is amazing. He does a Beatles cover, but it's Eleanor Rigby. Solo on a piano. It's just beautiful. Beautiful the way he does it. He does a variety of his songs with different arrangements. He connects one of his songs from Blaze of Glory, Down to London. He creates a medley between Down to London and The In Crowd. And you can see the interplay between the 2 songs. And Down to London is very much a song about joining the in crowd. I mean, it makes so much sense to blend those songs together. I love this album. I love this album as an album. When I did my Joe Jackson album ranking, I really wanted to break the rule and include this so that I could put it way up there towards the top, because it is one of my favorite Joe Jackson albums. I couldn't do it then, even though I talked it up. But I can put it at the top now because it is my favorite live album. Joe Jackson, Summer in the City, 2000. Very strongly recommended. And those are my favorite live albums. What do you think? Do you like these albums? Do you hate these albums? Drop that comment down below. I always love hearing from you. Are there, based on this selection, are there albums out there that you think I should give a listen to? Drop that comment down below. While you're dropping that comment down below, if you enjoyed the video, I appreciate that. I would also appreciate it if you would click the like button. If you're clicking the like button while you're down there, you could go ahead and click the subscribe button if you've not already done so. It costs you nothing, but it means the world to me, so I very much appreciate it. If you do click the subscribe button, go ahead and click the notification bell. The YouTube folks appreciate that, so on their behalf. Thanks again for hanging out with me today. Merry Christmas, by the way. And I hope that the rest of your day is glorious. See you soon.